Matthew chapter 24 and verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the anointed, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations to the Akim for pushing his gospel and truth and his sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is Brother Quanah Wath from the Arizona Great Millstone Camp, coming back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Lord will, it is straight to the point. Lord will, it is edifying, right? And this is going to be a quick little lesson, man. I just briefly wanted to touch on, right, prophecy, right, as, you know, we're ultimately commanded, you know, to preach, right, and to meditate on, right, prophecy, right. Let's go to this precept real quick. In Sirach, the 39th chapter, and verse 1, it says, But he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, and be occupied in prophecy, right? So you being in this ministry, you being in this truth, right, you are to be focusing, right, on prophecy, understanding the times that we are in, so that way we can identify, you know, when this place is going to go down, right? And when certain events that have been talked about, right, such as Jacob's trouble, right, which is also called the hour of temptation, right, and or World War III, and the deliverance is going to take place, right? Which ultimately, you know, you meditating and you know, watching prophecy, you know, right, is ultimately you know, walking, right, and following Yahweh Shai. Right, Scripture tells us that the testimony of Yahweh Shai is the spirit of prophecy. You know what I mean? So as for you know those that are out here teaching and preaching, right, that's how we're able to identify who is the true prophets and who the false prophets as well. Right, those that are going into prophecy and warning, you know, the flock of the things that are coming, and those who don't. Right, and we understand that, you know, beginning with the elder apostles of Great Millstone, right, on down to men that come up under them. You know, they go into prophecy, right? They are the true prophets of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, man. Fucking Satan, man. You know, but again, right, we are to speak prophecy, right? And I'll go to 2nd Esdras, and we'll go back to that. 2nd Esdras 15 verse 1. It says, Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy. You know, so again, that's the reason why I brought that out. Right, in Matthew the 24th chapter, right, because again, those goes into the different prophecies or the different signs that we will be seeing, right, that again allow us to know that, hey, the last few major prophecies are at hand, right? It said there should be uproars, you know, matter of fact, let's go to, actually I'll finish this out. It says, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, right? It says, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true, right, man? You know, let's go back to that. And right, because these prophecies are coming to pass, right? Yahweh Shai spoke of these prophecies, and guess what? They're coming to pass. You know, right? Faithful and true, right? This is Matthew 24, right? And it says right here, it says, and ye shall, verse 6, it says, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, right? See that ye be not troubled, right? And there's plenty of rumors of war that is going on right now, right? You got America, you know, threatening, you know, Iran, right, over Israel, right? Iran, you know, basically wants Israel, as well as even America, right, to stop, this genocide that Israel is committing, and killing the Palestinians right over here in Gaza, and this is why the whole, skirmish has popped off between Israel and, America and, against Iran, as well as Yemen and so on and so forth, right? Russia, is, when we read in Ezekiel the 38th chapter, Salakia, right? We're reading in Ezekiel the 38th chapter, right? It tells you, right, that Persia, right, being an ally to Russia, which we know Persia today is Iran, right? Scriptures also talk about, Russia being a guard unto them, right? So this is what we're seeing, right, when dealing with Iran, or it's like Russia, right, basically threatening America over this whole skirmish with Iran. America, basically saying, hey, if you don't stop these Houthi rebels, right, we're gonna fire on you, right? Speaking to Iran. Iran is basically warning them, right, of desolation. Like if you try, right, there's gonna be nothing but desolation for you, And America's keep on. America's, talking about, that they're ultimately gonna strike Iran, and Russia's jumping in the mix, man. Talking about, hey, if you don't, or if you fire on, Iran, it's gonna be dire consequences, And at the same time, in another spot, in the world, right, you got China, right, basically surrounding and doing drills, around Taiwan, right, ready to invade, ready to, go in there, which we know Taiwan, right, is an ally to America, man. You got the Taiwanese sea-hip implants here in America, right? I think they have one here in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, but you got all these different, nations, just to add, right, all these different nations that are once allied with America are ultimately issuing travel bans, man. Pointing out the hypocrisy and bullshit, right, of America. None of these nations, right, are really fucking with America anymore, man. Which, ultimately goes back to Daniel's, right, the second chapter, right, that, those EU nations, right, not blending with, America, not blending with, this, Rome 2.0, says, hey, 144, call all Yahweh Shemel Shai, and the car made a beep, but nonetheless, they're not fucking with America, man. And this isn't it, right? Because we understand that Jacob's trouble has to come before then, right? Jacob's trouble has to hit before then, right? And before, which we already know that World War III is already started, right? It's already, it's already started, right? But before the peak of World War III, which is those ICBM nuclear missiles being shot off, right? We understand that Jacob's trouble has to, the hit first, right? The micro SEAP, right, has to be made mandatory, right? Which means everybody has to be put into a position, right, to where you're going to need the CHIP, right, in order to participate in society, right, in order to, continue to receive funds from the government and so on and so forth, right? While all these jobs, being, let go or basically shutting down, right? People being let go, you got a lot of, the governments of these different states, right, are attacking the food stamps and whatnot, So we're in the time of great evils, man, right? As we read in the, Second Esdras, Second Esdras, the 14th chapter, if I'm not mistaken, right? Greater evils, right, that now is heard shall happen herein, right? We'll pull that up real quick, right? Actually, no, we'll finish this out, right? And then we'll hit that, right? Because it says, verse 7, it says, for nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. We're seeing all these different nations, right? Coming up against America, right? Different nations coming up against each other, right? We're in those times, right? It says, in kingdom against kingdom. It says, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. And we just had, 2 major earthquakes, right? One was a 7.1, right? That was over there in, Tonga, or I think that's how you say Tonga, right? You had a 7.7, right? That hit Thailand, Myanmar, and I think, China as well. You know what I mean? So you got all these different signs, right, that give us the understanding that, hey, guess what? This place is going the fuck down, man. Quick. This place is going down quick. But as it says right here in verse 8, it says, all these are the beginning of sorrows. And lately bros have been, ultimately talking about, girding up our minds, right, in this truth, in this ministry, and getting ready, right, for that bitter that is to come, because bitterness, of the scriptures is really about to be felt, man, right? Because, hey, our faith is going to be put to the test. You know what I mean? It's going to be put to the test. That all the things that we've been, speaking, right, are we going to truly live by those things, man, right? The scriptures, all the things that, we, warn the people of, are we going to ultimately do those things that we were speaking of, man, and warning the people of, having the faith, right, fearing the Lord, trusting in Yahweh Shem El Shai, in the certain situations that we end up in, are we going to apply those scriptures, man, because that right there is, the point, of the scriptures say that then shall there know who are my chosen, right? Roughly paraphrasing, man, because the ones that are really about Yahweh Shem El Shai are going to be doing it, man, and the Lord is going to allow them to shine, right? Isaiah the 13th chapter, it tells you what, man, that a man shall be made, more precious than, fine gold, right? Even the golden wedge of Ophir, right? Which that man, right, is ultimately going into a man of the Lord, right? Those who are going to be serving the Lord, Yahweh Shem El Shai, in these times, and everything that they were, gathering in the spirit, right? They're gonna use and meditate on and utilize, in the times to come. Because these times are gonna get rough, man. But see, hey, through Yahweh Shem El Shai, man, we ain't worried about what's coming, man. Right? Scriptures talk about not being, afraid of evil tidings, because we're in those evil times, man. This is 2nd Ezra 14 and verse 16. It says, for yet greater evils than those which thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter, man. And we're already looking at some, some very terrible times, just by all the different videos people are putting out, right, about, the American economy and all these different planes going down, and the storms that are coming through and killing people, the earthquakes, right? All these things that we see or that are happening now, the wars, right? The genocide that's happening, you know what I mean? All the, the revelation of all these different, child sex trafficking rings that, Esau got going on behind the scenes, and biochemical labs, and all these different shit that we see going on, and the time that's coming is going to be far greater than that, man. It's going to be far greater than that, but again, we have to, gird up our minds, man. Put on, therefore as the elect, right, mirroring the characteristics, of, those who the Lord are approved of, right, mirroring those within us, right, those same characteristics within ourselves, constantly examining ourselves, right, truly proving our faith and fear of Yahweh Shem El Shai in these times, before those times, pop off, man. Remember now thy creator in the days of thy youth, right? Ecclesiastes 12:1. We about to enter into some, very harsh times, man. But first and foremost, we got to trust and believe in Yahweh Shem El Shai. Trusting in this damn devil, right, is ultimately going to lead to your shame and your confusion, man. Actually, I'll go this and grab a couple more scriptures, man, and we'll close out. Jeremiah chapter 7. It's like Jeremiah 17 and 7. gone. Jeremiah 17 and verse 5, it says, thus saith Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart, right, meaning your mind, departed from the Lord, man, meaning you're done. Right? You turn away from Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai to trust in this damn devil and his system and what he's got planned, right? Hey, you're done. You're dead. Right? It says, for he shall be like the heath in the desert, and shall not see when good cometh. Right? You ain't going to get those blessings, man, the protection from the Lord. You ain't going to get it. Right? It says, but shall inhabit the parched places, as in the wilderness, in a salt land, and not inhabited. Right? Meaning you're going to be asked out, man. You know, the Lord is going to leave you out there, you know, to die, man. You know, when all hell breaks loose, right? It says, blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is, right? And you would go into that word blessed, it means highly favored and very fortunate. We understand the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, as we reading throughout the scriptures, the Lord is all about the elect, man. Right? That grape of the cluster, right? That remnant you read in Isaiah the 10th chapter, you know, the apple of his eyes you read in Zechariah. You know, the Lord said what? He hath care for his elect. Wisdom of Solomon 3 and 9. You know, and as well as Matthew the 24th chapter, right? One of the most, you know, sought after prophecies, right? Matthew 24, where he talks about what? He's going to send the angels, right? How is I going to crack the sky and send the angels to gather the elect? You know? Those are the ones that are going to trust in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, and those are the ones that are highly favored and are going to be very fortunate in the times to come, right? Verse 8, it says, for he shall be as a tree planted by the waters. You know, meaning you're going to aid life, man. You know, you always look at, you know, riverbanks and, you know, videos of people going down certain rivers and in the Amazon and whatnot. All those trees that are by the riverbanks, hey, man, they're abundant, man. Because they're receiving that water, which is life, and through the Spirit, right? Hey, the scriptures, right, is likened unto water, right? The fountains of living water, right, which is life. You know, scriptures talk about what these words are the doctrine of life, man. You know, so it says, and that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh, but the leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit, man. Hey, so ultimately we're going to be taken care of, man, you know, through the Spirit, right? As long as we continue to trust and believe in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, no matter how, you know, things, you know, pan out, right, and how things look, right? We understand that these times they're coming, and we have all the different signs that point to, you know, all hell about to break loose. You know, brothers have been going in on, again, this economy and how these tariffs are really affecting the people. And only, you know, Esau's, you know, just, he's squeezing that grip, you know, which is these people, you know, which bros, you know, say that it's, you know, it's crazy how these people aren't popping right now, man. How there's not, you know, major uproars here in America. And it's really because these people are fucking stupid out here, man. You know, they're like those horses that have those blinders on, those carriages. They can't see what's on the side of them, right? So therefore, they can't see what's coming, you know, if something attacks them. And see, this is how those people are, you know. They don't know what the fuck is coming, man, you know, which is why they're ultimately going to get caught with their pants down, right? One of my favorite scriptures, you know, is in St. John. It's like Luke. No, it's like it's in Luke. Yeah, Luke 21 and verse 34, it says, and take heed, right, to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, right, and drunkenness and cares of this life, right, being, you know, overindulgent, right, you being, you know, riotous, you know, you people just being fucking, you know, blind, right, to whatever, you know, is about to come by you being insatiable, right? Not having self-control, not having discipline, right? It says, and so that day come upon you unawares, right? You engaging in those things, and you're not going to see what comes, you know? It says, for as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth, as a snare, right? Which a snare is a trap, right? And the ultimate trap is really what that, that the RFID micro C hit, man. That's the ultimate trap, right? Because then evil Esau, is going to make, you be permanent servitude unto him, right? When you go into that word mark in the Greek, in the Revelations, the 13th chapter, verse 16, it goes back to the Greek word charagma, right? Which the definition of that, one of the definitions, right? It says a badge of servitude. Esau is trying to make you a perpetual slave, to his dystopia that he's trying to, push and establish, not telling you that if you do take it, you're going to be destroyed by the Heavenly Father, when Yahweh Shai comes back by way of, either ICBM nuclear missile, the chariots coming in, sending down a laser beam, or even in the judgments to come, right, in Jacob's trouble, famine, earthquake, all the different things that are about to, be, in this time, right, that are going to take place in the time period that's coming, right, Jacob's trouble, right? You don't know, Lord can give you over to any one of those different judgments, man. This is why you got to keep your eyes open, right? Again, look at prophecy, man. First and foremost, take heed to the words of Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shah, because in order, you taking heed to the prophets is you taking heed to Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shah, because he speaks to the ministry of the prophets, right? Stop being carnal and say, oh, I don't want to follow these men. Stop looking at the men and look at the message, Stop looking at the messenger and look at the message. The message is what? A warning, which is really mercy, But we understand that only 1/3 of the nation of Israel here in America is going to receive this message, as well as you have elect members, right, that are scattered abroad throughout the world, right? But the number overall, right, as the scriptures say in 2 Esdras, the 9th chapter, right, is like a wave compared to a drop. It's a huge difference, man. So I'll finish this out. Verse 36, it says, watch ye therefore and pray always, right? Constantly be watching, constantly be in prayer, right? That you be not accounted worthy. It's like that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. So continue to watch, continue to pray, right? Which is ultimately you showing forth faith, right? So continue to watch, continue in the faith, of Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shah, in Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shah, and hey, continue to be brotherly, continue to throw up the curses, man, get this fucking place out of here, man, so that way we can again, be those that see the downfall of this place, But with that, Lord wills, that if I, Lord will, straight to the point, I'm going to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh B'Hashem, Yahweh Shah B'Hashem, Rechak Wadash, that belongs to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the great millstone. Till next time, I say shalom.